you're not creating for yourself. You are creating with the larger audience in mind. You are creating for the audience, definitely. When you are a creative director of something and you pour your heart and soul, it's like birthing a baby. And it was the most euphoric feeling. Staying open, never shooting down an idea, and really collaborating and listening to each other is really where frankly, the best creative will come from, but also the best, most harmonious and exciting and, continuing the love of what we do, where that will really come from.
Welcome to the StageLink podcast, your access and connection to the live performing arts. In this podcast, you'll hear from some of the industry's most inspiring people from around the globe who create magic on stage and backstage. Our guests share their knowledge, passion, and the real stories of how a show comes together. We hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the StageLink podcast. My name is Anna Robb, and today we're talking with Craig Laurie. Craig is the Chief Creative Officer at RWS Global, where he leads a powerhouse team of creatives, designers, and casting directors responsible for immersive productions in luxury resorts, cruise ships, theme parks, and custom venues worldwide. Craig is more than just a creative leader. He's a master at aligning vision, fostering collaboration, and elevating storytelling to meet the cultural and emotional heartbeat of every destination. Under his guidance, the RWS Global team has delivered award-winning productions from chamber music in unexpected places to large-scale opening ceremonies, Broadway-style shows, and branded experiences for the likes of Warner Brothers, Netflix, Mattel, and Rolling Stone magazine. Whether it's an intimate stage or a global stage, Craig ensures that every project not only meets client needs, but exceeds audience expectations. Outside his role at RWS, Craig also serves as chair of the board for Dakota Carnegie Hall's affiliate ensemble, blending artistic excellence with meaningful community engagement. Welcome to the show, Craig.
Thank you. And thank you for that very nice introduction. I'm sitting here like, I am? What?
I love that. Sometimes when people read back your career or your summary of yourself, you're like, what is this? Okay, that's me. Good.
Yeah.
So you lead a massive team of creatives at RWS Global. And just for some people who may be more in the Broadway space or theatre space, just explain to our audience what that means, being the Chief Creative Officer at RWS.
Yes, I oversee what is the creative and design division of the company. So it's really all of the creative members. We have really three different sectors of that, which is creative direction of live experiences. And then we have talent and creative casting, where we source all of our live stage talent, even our backstage talent, and as well as the creatives that we work with in the industry to make the experiences come alive. And then also the destination design division. So that is really your creative directors and master planners, the builders of worlds and such. And, my responsibility is at this point really sourcing those creatives to join the company, supporting that team so that our clients' expectations are met.
Amazing. And those teams that come together, are they there as full-time employees, or you sort of contract them per project in terms of a group of designers and a group of creatives that come on board WS for a period of time to create something and then leave? Or how does that work?
It's a little bit of a mix, but I would say primarily it is, full-time employees. They really are the secret sauce of the company, or part of the secret sauce, one of the ingredients of the secret sauce to make our experiences come to life. And, is part of the heartbeat of the company. So yeah, it is a good amount of full-time employees. We do at times, if it's let's say a director choreographer or something like that, we will outsource and bring somebody in to work on a specific project.
Nice. And do they work on projects that sit in those different genres of entertainment that RWS does, or do they sort of stay in a lane of, Broadway style shows or the immersive space, etc.?
Well, actually, I would say more of the latter. When we get a specific project, a specific, genre of a project, and we will be bringing on somebody from, the outside, you will really go searching for the best in that field, in the genre that we are creating for. So I guess you could say that, yes, if it's a huge song and dance experience, yeah, we will definitely turn to, top Broadway creatives or, really innovative choreographers and things like that. Or if it's a specific designer as well. I think the company is incredibly connected in the arts and entertainment industry with, frankly, a lot of the full time creative team members and really the full production team as well. A lot of, deep rooted connections in the arts industry. So we have a really large network to pull from.
And you come from a performing background yourself. So you were on Broadway for a while, correct?
I did, yes, I was an actor and I had a decent, lengthy career
Decent
on
run.
stage. I had a decent run. I hung up my tap shoes though a while ago now, but no, I had such memorable, incredible experiences. And I was very lucky. I got to work with, the best of the best in the industry. And some of my closest friends are still from, those days, friends that I'll have with me for life. And a lot of good memories, a lot of really fun times.
I love that.
Definitely.
How much does your performance career or your experience on stage sort of influence, if at all, your job today?
And it's interesting because I was actually thinking about this. I was telling a friend of mine that when I was performing, there was only one time in my life, in my performing career, that I actually, let's say a book show, a scripted show, that I actually originated a role. Most of what I did was going into existing productions, whether it be, Chicago or Jersey Boys or what have you. And these were experiences that are already open. Some of them very early on. Jersey Boys, for example, I was one of the first companies to ever do that. But being a person to step into an existing piece, I think that I've always been good at evaluating things, whether it be a piece of music or a script, anything like that. But, stepping into a role that is actually already formed, so many times I had to sit there and really deconstruct it and make that emotional journey of the character really resonate with myself and my own emotions and make that character come to life for me. And through that evaluation, I was able to really, inspect and become a detective on an emotional journey of a person and how they affect the story and how to make my own emotional spirit come to life in that story. So there's been quite a lot of times that I've pulled on, some, I guess, tools that I didn't even know that I developed during that time and have used that when we are putting together experiences and really seeing what's on the page and also seeing what's not on the page and making both things come to life in a very impactful way for the audiences.
That's a really interesting. I do think sometimes you don't realize what you've learned until you have to deploy it somewhere else, right?
Totally. 100%. 100%.
You're like, oh, I
Yeah.
got to pull on that. I got to pull on that. What was your transition then from performer into sort of a creative direction role? Was that an immediate thing? Was that a journey? Was it easy? Because, when people decide to sort of move forward or hang up their tap shoes, as you said, how did that roll out for you?
It's really interesting because I was always around RWS, let's say unofficially, until I was officially involved in it. And it came by way of a classical chamber music experience. The company has always worked with brands and IP and bringing those brands and IP to a lot of our experiences. And with one of our cruise lines, actually our first cruise line that we ever worked with, a Holland America line, the head of entertainment there, a man named Bill Prince, wanted to develop the best live music program at sea. And I'm going to be totally honest with you, he did. Bill created something called Music Walk. And what he wanted to do was team up with, really household music brands and bring them on board. So, he brought on the B.B. King's Blues Club. He partnered with Billboard Magazine, Rolling Stone Magazine. And then through some nudging of myself, he reached out to Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. And Lincoln Center bit, and they found it to be very intriguing to develop a program bringing their brand to the high seas. But my personal transition, before I was an actor, I was actually a classical musician. And I I went to the Fame School in Manhattan, the High School for the Performing Arts, which is now called LaGuardia High School, and I majored in instrumental music. Music was always a huge part of my life. But then I found the stage, and the true phrase of being bit by the bug, I mean, you feel that bite. I mean, the first time that I ever stepped on a stage as an actor, I said, oh, well, screw the piano. This is what I'm doing. And I did. But in a very serendipitous way, I officially joined the company, that Lincoln Center program, which was called Lincoln Center Stage, come to life for Holland America Line, which was to this date the most challenging, because I frankly didn't know any better, but the most challenging and probably the most rewarding experience, frankly, of my life, both, on stage and off stage. And I had a really great support system there and a tremendous amount of trust from the client, from Bill Prince, who I was just mentioning before, that I will frankly never forget.
That's so great. And to have a really quality project to sort of take from from out of the gate is pretty cool.
I mean, I hit it out of the gate hard. It was, I don't want to sound too cheeky here, but since I'm in the UK, I'll use some British phrases, but it was a huge success. And I remember that opening night, when you are a creative director of something and you pour your heart and soul, it's like birthing a baby. And it was the most euphoric feeling to see that open and to see the audience's reaction. And again, to feel that complete trust from my client. It was a really incredibly special experience.
So now you're doing lots of different projects. What does raising the experience mean to you? And how do you work with your teams to sort of evolve that philosophy of raising the experience?
Yeah, there's so many things that I can say about that. When it comes to the team, I believe in collaboration, 100%. I believe that, ideas can come from anywhere. I will never, ever think that I'm, especially at this point in my career, the most creative person in the room at all. I think that staying open, never shooting down an idea, and really collaborating and listening to each other is really where frankly, the best creative will come from, but also the best, most harmonious and exciting, continuing the love of what we do, where that will really come from. I've been really blessed with an incredible team that I'm so proud to say I see them on a daily basis work so collaboratively with each other. And I mean, from huge, massive projects to the tiniest of things. Like I said, I'm here right now in the UK, and the team here was doing a show that was based around, New York City, and they've reached out to their New York City counterparts and had them, record a New York accent. I mean, just down to that point of really just constant collaboration and leaning on each other. It's really special and it's awesome. And that team really getting with each other and finding out each other's hidden talents. I mean, we have one of my creative directors is a search and recovery diver as well, in the midst of creating these, intense and amazing experiences. Some have produced fashion shows as well as, write musicals and things like that. And some of them have had really beautiful established careers as well. But going back to your question about how to raise the experience, I think for the team, it's being a support system for them, always providing clear directives, but very constructive feedback, celebrating their individual voice and what they bring to the table. Always keeping the goal of the client's demographic always in mind, because that is what we do. We are a service provider. We're creating for our clients and the client's demographic, being a support system for them and hearing them and guiding them in a constructive way, I think is always raising their experience, allowing their voices to be heard. For the audiences, I think that speaking of team members and speaking of hearing, your creatives and your employees, one of my creatives, Rachel Dayheim, brilliant woman. She gave me a book recommendation, which I'm sure that you've heard of. It's called The Power of Moments by, I think it's Chip and Dan Heath. I don't know if you've read it, but
haven't read it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
You know what? It's a really a phenomenal book. It doesn't necessarily deal with, let's say, creating anything in the arts or anything like that, but it deals about, human connection and creating meaningful moments and centers around, themes of elevating people, insight, connection, developing moments that, will be meaningful with those themes. And when you really look at the themes in that book, it really resonated with me. And I've thanked Rachel a couple of times for bringing it to me, but the power of moments and elevating people and, making them be seen and heard. It's not just about being nice or anything like that. It can come in the form of, like I said, taking the time to really hear a team member and providing constructive feedback. But, it could be when you're creating for different cultures or demographics, really putting something out there where you're saying to the audiences, I see you and we are celebrating you. That's where you will have that connection with them, where you're elevating them and it will create a meaningful moment for them. Or even just being, super prepared for a client, meeting, your client as a human being and being open to engaging collaboration with them as well. But I believe that, those are types of ways that I, guide the team in raising the experience. Yeah.
I think that's a great answer. And I think there's such an art to that in our industry, because the beauty of what we do is that we're bringing all of these different skill sets together to create something. It's not like a bunch of accountants working together or a bunch of lawyers. There's a designer and there's a performer and there's a creative director and there's a musician. And they're all, in and of itself, when they're alone, there is no show. But to create moments where a good creative team has to create combustive moments within those talents and those teams to create something amazing, So those moments it's super important.
Oh, absolutely. And, there's definitely, ways that we could discuss creating for the audiences. But again, providing those moments for the creative team, it's a very different and interesting and exciting thing to navigate, because it's never cut and dry. You're really asking people to develop something with their heart and their emotions. And when that's, when it starts on the page from there, then that's when things really will resonate with the audiences. Wise teacher once told me that, if it resonates with you, it'll resonate with us. And, allowing the teams to feel free to express themselves in everyday work life. And then also, when they are creating something. And it's a very interesting thing, but it's not, guiding creatives is not black and white at all, and every day is different. So, but what we do is fun.
It's cool,
fun.
Isn't it?
It's challenging, but it's a lot of fun.
And then you've got the factor, because you've worked with major IPs like Netflix, Warner Brothers, and Mattel. And, I'm always fascinated by people that work with very stringent brands in terms of how they want to be represented and the visuals and the aesthetics. And then how do you design and propose something new that they're going to want to do that might be outside their comfort zone? And in that space, I mean, that adds another layer to creating something, doesn't it? And working with IPs and their preferences. And have you had a chance to sort of really break the mold with them, or have breakthroughs where you feel like, oh, they're not going to buy this, but you got something across the line with them that sort of allowed them to loosen up in terms of their IP?
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, all the time. But, it's interesting because at RWS, we are, no matter what, our clients are a brand. So, a long time ago, we were doing a show, and speaking about bringing in outside creatives, we brought in script writers for this one experience. And there were times throughout the development of it that we were guiding the script writers, and, especially in the leisure and attractions industry, and especially when you are, when you are doing something outdoors, when you're doing something, let's say, at a, huge theme park, you are competing with the roller coaster. So, it's true. It's totally true. Especially when you do things outdoors, you're competing with all of the natural elements of the world, whether it be clouds coming in, all of a sudden everyone's focus goes to that. It's going to rain, or if it gets super windy, or if there's, a hawk just, barking in the distance, any of those types of things. But I think that, clarity is key when you are developing, especially in those types of environments, and especially for audiences that maybe don't frequent the theater or anything like that. Clarity in onboarding the audience, and then, throughout the experience, creating something that is very meaningful, that they can connect with and is clear. But working with brands and IP, it is all about research and really understanding the client, the brand that you're creating for. But then when you do integrate that IP, really knowing that IP, like the back of your hand, because you're really not, just creating something random. You're creating something based on something that is beloved by the population. So it needs to feel authentic and appropriate and real and, frankly, expected, because they are coming to see something that they know and that they are familiar with and that excites them. Something where it might seem minor, but when I was developing that Lincoln Center project, and I guess you can say that this was my first foray into immersive entertainment, even though, this was back when immersive wasn't the hot
I
word that
didn't call
is,
it that.
might be a bit overused at this point, but, everything is immersive these days. But
100%.
it was right. It was probably my first foray into that, and I didn't even really know it. The Lincoln Center project was a very intimate experience. The venue really hosted maybe 95 people in the audience. It was much more of almost like a salon, if you will, a chamber music salon, which was incredibly special.
That's cool.
Right? I mean, really, the whole thing about it was really fantastic. But growing up a classical musician, my parents loved that I loved Beethoven. They had no idea why. And this was a moment where, we really broke that fourth wall. And I spoke with Lincoln Center and said, I would really love for the musicians to do direct address, almost like a conversation with the audience, really turning to them saying, well, we see you, you see us, and let's talk about this, what we're about to play here. Because they, the program, the repertoire was, A, substantial, and B, the real deal. I mean, they were playing what you would go to Lincoln Center on 65th Street in Manhattan and hear.
Wow.
And that conversation, back when this was being developed in 2015, at that point, the classical music scene didn't have that audience engagement just yet. That came a little bit later. I always like to credit myself as being the pioneer, but that's not really the case.
You played a part. You played a part.
Yeah. But getting that over the line with Lincoln Center, they were concerned about it at first because they didn't really do that. And now they do. And you can feel it in the halls that the audiences, are even more with them. But yeah, getting that over the line was a big win. And I think it, created a very heartwarming, insightful, and exciting experience for the guests on board.
Speaking of audiences and the way you did that, what did you see? Has the things changed in the audiences in terms of either demographics, in terms of what they like or what you're doing? And how much does what you create play into how audiences show up today?
I mean, totally. Yes to all of it. D, all of the above. You know what? There's so many things I want to say on this, but I would say probably the quickest thing when you are, especially when you're not in a theater, and I hate to say it, but frankly, sometimes when you are in a theater, you're competing with this the entire time. People are constantly on their phones. I hate to say it. I could be guilty at times as well. But when folks are watching an experience, it is hard for them to really disconnect and focus on one specific thing and allow themselves to receive it. There are ways to combat that. There's, I held up my cell phone. There's definitely ways to integrate technology into experiences in very exciting ways. But that's probably one of the biggest changes that I've seen, I would say, over the past 10 years is that, people are really on their phones a lot. And how do you not, what is it? If you can't beat them, join them. How do you, in some ways, when it's appropriate, make it be part of the experience? Yeah, definitely. And technology is fun. It's a blast. Like, who doesn't love playing with gadgets and toys and things like that and making something come to life? And how do you make it be something that brings people together as opposed to, makes a distraction from an experience? I was speaking of audiences, actually, let me backtrack for a second. The second part of that I want to say is, yes, you do have that. You have the, the distraction of cell phones, what have you. But I do believe that I think that we are still coming out of COVID trauma. I see it on a daily basis when I go to, experience something, that people are still at this time seeking true human connection, like an authentic human interaction that feels super meaningful. So while I can say that audiences have changed because of the cell phone technology, how much we rely on these things and are distracted by them, I also can say that because of what the world has been through, I've also seen audiences change in that way, that they are excited about experiencing something together. Two instances. I was at this immersive exhibit space in Miami called Super Blue. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
I haven't, no.
I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. It's honestly like a big playground for the whole family. It's these art installations, everything from James Turrell to and everything in between. And it is really a place where people can come together and experience something together. And it's really exciting to watch. And there was one exhibit, I've been to it a couple of times, and I just went a couple of weeks ago. There's one new exhibit from an artist group called Random International, where it's graffiti done in through a black light, an ultraviolet, what have you. But you take, what looks like a spray can. And
you get to do it.
And you get to do it. And I saw grandmothers do it with their grandkids. I saw, husbands and wives all just making graffiti. It was beautiful. It was absolutely fantastic. So things like that, that's where I really see audiences wanting to, yeah, sure, maybe immersive, maybe get into it, maybe get into those worlds. Another experience that I saw that was truly such a defining moment, and I was taken to it by two of my team members, Damien and Monica. It was in Brooklyn, and it's called Dead Letter Number 9. And they make fun of me for this because, after seeing it, the effect of it it wasn't immediately known to me. I talk about it, I would say, once a week at this point, and this was a couple of years ago that I went to it.
So it's had an impact.
Yeah, it's had an impact. And they're like, geez, Louise, Craig, I guess you really liked it because, anyway, it's an experience, and they market it as a conversation starter. And what you do is you go into this building that looks, like a post office. And it's all of these letters that really never found their receiving home, to the recipients, that just got lost, and they've been returned to the post office, and they are what's known as dead letters. So there's all these dead letters everywhere, all these letters that basically have gotten nowhere. But you walk into this experience and everyone has a dead letter. And this letter has, some questions in it. And you walk into, any one of what looks like a post office, into, one of the office doors. And there's a scene. It could be a campground, a child's bedroom. And there's, a host in there, and they're doing something, maybe a daily task, whether it be crocheting or, something like that. And they're sitting there and they kind of, oh, hello, and you walk into the space and you're in this familiar space that inspires intrigue and such. And the host is, kind of talking, asking where people are from and things like that. And, they'll say, what do you have in your hand? Someone opens up one of those dead letters and it has a question in it about, something that you might regret or anything like that. And all of a sudden, somehow magically, you are sharing your deepest, darkest moments with complete strangers.
Wow.
One of the most special experiences. I remember I was in the campground room, and it was, when I think about it, I get so moved by it because I was sitting next to this woman 10 minutes in, and of course, we're from New York. I could tell that she was Italian. We're physical people. She starts hitting me because we're laughing over something, and that kind of and hitting me, whatever. Her name is Gina. She's from Brooklyn. She's a photographer. We left that experience exchanging numbers, she's also in the arts industry. And it was one of the, bringing people together, just so special. And somehow openly discussing with complete strangers about your parents, your fears. It was really quite incredible. And so that's going back to your question. That's another way that I've seen people immediately break down any sort of social barriers or social fears of just talking to somebody. And I think that's so amazing. I was at a show the other day here in the West End. My Master Builder, it's called. It was with, oh my God, it was so good. Ewan McGregor and Elizabeth Debicki. Oh, I hope I'm saying it right. She was the last Princess Diana in the Crown series. And an actress named Kate Fleetwood, I believe her name was. Oh my God, incredible. Incredible
Okay.
she was. But it was a major plot twist towards the middle of the second act. I was sitting next to this woman, don't know her from nothing. And the plot twist happened. And I just went like to myself. And she goes, and then she starts laughing, and then I'm laughing. And then we're both laughing at each other. But that's what people I feel are, as closed off as we were. And maybe sometimes people might appear a little closed off. They're actually quite open. They're ready to receive a connection like that. It's the reason why haunted houses are like some of the biggest things right now. You're walking through a space, being spooked out of your mind with somebody, grabbing onto each other, screaming, all of that. And that, experiencing that emotion together. It's the data has shown that is people are craving things like that.
Yeah, and I think you could say it's the pandemic, but I think it's also the way that we're evolving as a society with and through the phones and digital technology and people dating through the apps. And, there's, I listen to a lot of podcasts where they talk that, that people are not being as social as they used to be because they're working a lot longer and they're not meeting people in a natural way. They'll go and have a coffee date from Tinder and then bounce. And like, there's just not. And so in any sense, then the art sort of becomes a responsibility to create spaces where people can connect,
Yeah, absolutely.
create that trust and space where people can feel good together. It's so crucial to culture and our humanity, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah.
So, and then I guess the other couple of final questions in terms of, technologies as they arrive and as AI is coming around and as, there's just the new thing every second that we turn around now in terms of what's available to us in the industry. How much does RWS sort of play into embracing new technologies into the shows, or, is it story first and then having the technology serve it? Or how do you incorporate it to stay sort of up to speed with what technology's out there to use?
Yeah, totally. I think that it needs to be incorporated when appropriate. Technology, going back on connection, we've seen, I'm not sure if you saw this, but we've partnered with Snapchat. Our sports division has, when you go to a sporting event, that's definitely a moment where people come together. Sometimes it leads into screaming and shouting and all of those things, but people are experiencing emotions together. But so something like that, when we all watch it and people love it, they love watching people experience something. But whether it be, you're at a stadium and there's, a timeout or what have you, and then the Snapchat filters pop on the screen and people look crazy. But everyone is having just an innocent, fun laugh, at each other, including, yourself. Moments like that will create a connection, an emotional souvenir, something like that. I think that's a great way to incorporate technology. I also think that, like I said, where appropriate, there are ways to do things where you can, again, use any of these devices as a tool to heighten the actual experience that you're going through. We've created, scavenger hunts using VR technology and things like that through tablets, through any of those types of things. And that can be very fun, and especially for kids as well. And then they're getting their parents involved in it. Again, it becomes a connective moment where everyone's experiencing something. And if that means using a gadget to enhance that, great.
Yeah. Nice. So good. One final question. When you come to recruiting your designers or your team, how do you find people? How is your way of seeking out that talent and then vetting that talent for RWS?
Earlier when I was on a tangent about something. I think I was speaking about writers that we brought in, and I said to them, I had to sit them down and, through the guiding them on this one experience, they kept on saying, well, this is our voice. This is how we want to. And I totally understand that. But again, breaking it down to clarity and things like that, when that experience opened, and there were times when we had some specific meetings they felt guided in a way that the writing wasn't 100% where they wanted it to go. But I kept on going back towards clarity, that it was a short experience, needed to be very clear. Anyway, when the experience opened, they said to the team, I totally get this now. What you do, where you're creating for yourselves, you are, in the Broadway world, someone will put something down. They will create a piece that is their voice, their vision, what have you. And you put it out into the world, and fingers crossed that it becomes a hit, With what we do and really creating for the masses, you have to go through really a system of measurements here where they will like it. Or the larger percentage of them will like it. There will be something for everyone. It will be appropriate for the demographic and for the client's demographic that you're creating for. But to answer your question, when sourcing creatives, I do look for that. People who are able to see the bigger picture and not just create something for themselves, but for society where it's at currently, and be open to that. Be open to exploring what would resonate with numerous generations, cultures, what have you.
And how do you vet that?
That's the biggest thing that I look for. Yeah.
How do you vet that in a person when you meet them? Is it through a number of conversations? You got particular questions you ask them? Like, how do you know that they're that kind of person that they're going to serve the vision of the IP and what RWS need to do?
Sure. Definitely through a handful of interviews. And I will give them an assignment.
Okay.
I will definitely give them, a small assignment where you can see, not only where their creative brain, goes, but how you give them the brief of saying this is going to be for X, demographic in this part of the world and what have you, and seeing how they take that information and incorporate it into the piece that they're creating. That's really the biggest thing. And you can tell a lot from that assignment.
Yeah, that is a good way to make sure that they understand, right? So good.
There's definitely, an art form to creating in this industry. And it is not, you're not creating for yourself. You are creating, with the larger audience in mind. You are creating for the audience, definitely.
And that's like you said, a very specific sector in terms of people who are creatives for that kind of industry, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
Look, Craig, what a wonderful conversation. It's so nice to have met you and heard about your work and your life and time on Broadway. So I wish you all the best for your upcoming projects, and thank you for being on the StageLink podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Super fun. Thank you for listening to the StageLink podcast. StageLink is an online platform that gives you access and connection to the live performing arts. As a guest, you can read about live performing arts from across the globe and gain insights from performers and artists on stage and all the amazing people who work behind the curtain. If you are an industry professional, StageLink Pro offers jobs, networks, and career support tools, and you can build your own professional profile on the site. As a StageLink podcast listener, you are eligible for 20% off your StageLink Pro membership. Visit us at stagelink.com, and when joining, use the code SLPodcast. StageLink, that's StagelYNC.com.